in the booth and give it another shot. The same thing with each chorus and hook I compose. I compare it to those great moments I've cataloged. If I feel like it's falling short, I'll go back and do it again. I keep holding up what I've done against those moments I've cataloged and ask myself, is it good enough? Now, is every song I record going to be a classic like Whoa or The Bridge Is Over? Of course not. But by forcing myself to measure up against a song like that, I bring out the best in myself. It's like the old saying, shoot for the moon. Even if you miss it, you will land among the stars. But in order to push yourself to be great that way, the first thing you have to be able to do is to appreciate the greatness in others. You cannot go around believing no one is as good as you, and therefore you don't have anyone to measure up against. That's bullshit. No matter what you do or what you feel, there's someone else great in it too. So instead of believing your own hype, identify that individual and make them your competition. People like to say I'm a hater, but nothing could be further from the truth. What I am is an appreciator. I'm always appreciating what other people are doing. Competing is not hating. It's actually putting appreciation into action. You must be an appreciator no matter what you do. Let's say you're a novelist. Identify whoever the writer is you think is the best and measure whatever you write against them. If you're an architect, walk around your city and measure yourself against the most beautiful buildings you see. You need to stare at those buildings and say, you know what? That staircase was really fucking good. And then store it away in your mind. And if you really think your work is nicer than anything you see, compare yourself to whoever built the Eiffel Tower or the Taj Mahal. No matter how confident you are in your own abilities, there's still someone out there for you to compete against. Never think you're above competition. One way I see people fall into this trap is by listening to the individuals around them. This happens with rappers all the time. A guy will get in the booth and spit a verse, and one of his homies will say, yo, that was a hot line. Bam, that's all it takes. Now in the rapper's mind, he's already the greatest of all time. His friends will go on to tell him he's better than whatever SoundCloud young boy is hot at the moment. The rapper will eat it up and grow even cockier. But notice what his homies are not saying. That he's better than Jay, that he's better than Kendrick, that he's better than me. Those are the standards that you need to hold yourself up against before you start thinking you're the GOAT. If you only compare yourself to inferior opponents, you'll feel like you're doing something when you're really not doing much at all. This is why a lot of rappers challenge me prematurely. Their friends make them think they're ready when they haven't achieved anywhere near what I have. That's fine with me. I just have to knock them back down to size a bit. No matter what you've accomplished, you're never done competing. I've sold over 30 million records, but every time I step into the booth, I know I'm about to be measured up. Not against anyone else either. Against myself. Whenever I put a new song out, people are going to say, that's cool, but it's not like when you first did it. I used to get frustrated with that response, but now I accept it. I'm not going to get another chance to make a first impression. Until I put down the mic for the final time, I'm going to be locked in a rivalry with myself. That doesn't frustrate me anymore. I'm dope. Why would I be mad at the comparisons? Now I need to just go out and beat myself. The Bearsville Boot Camp. Roughly 2 hours from New York City, just outside of the town of Woodstock, near the home of the famous music festival of the same name, you'll find the Bearsville Studios. The recording studio, which kind of reminds me of a barn, was founded in 1969 by Albert Grossman, a legendary music industry promoter. Grossman is best known for once being Bob Dylan's manager, as well as the man who guided the career of Janis Joplin and folk stars like Peter, Paul, and Mary. Grossman's dream was to build a studio in a rustic setting close to New York City, where rock artists could escape the noise and distractions of the city. For many years, the studio was considered one of the finest rock and roll music recording spaces in the country. In 2000, Grossman was long gone, though his wife Sandy still ran the place. But he and Dylan were replaced by another type of artist, New York City rappers. Responding to the same impulse that had motivated Grossman over 30 years earlier, the hip-hop production team, the Trackmasters, had decided to rent Bearsville out for 3 months. The duo, comprised of producers Tone and Polk, took over the studios, and then invited a mixture of established and unknown rappers and producers to travel up to Woodstock and record with them. There wouldn't be any clubs to go to or entourages hanging around. It was basically a hip-hop boot camp where the only agenda was music, music, and more music. Here's how I wound up there with them. One day I saw Corey Rooney, a producer and songwriter for Sony, and Marky D from the Fat Boys at my neighborhood barbershop. I had just finished the demo tape, so I asked Corey if I could play it for them. Corey said okay, then led us to his black convertible 500 SL Benz parked out front, and we all piled into the car to listen. A couple of seconds into the first song, Corey's phone rang and he picked it up. I didn't like that. He kept talking through the second song. Meanwhile, Marky seemed disinterested. After a few more songs, Corey turned to Marky and said, I don't know, what you think, man? It's cool, Marky replied, but I'd already seen enough. I knew I was a nobody to them, but I wasn't going to sit there and be disrespected. Give me my take back, I growled, popping the demo out of the stereo. Y'all old school. I grabbed my tape and jumped out of the ride. It was a pretty brash, some might say stupid way to treat 2 industry veterans. I figured I'd never hear from them again. Then a few days later, I got word that they were looking for me. It turns out Corey had been listening. Guess he was a good multitasker after all, and had passed along the tape to Tone and Polk. They'd liked what they heard, Corey told me over the phone, and wanted me to come upstate to work on some music with them. I was excited they liked my music, but it also sounded like a setup. I just insulted these two, and now they wanted me to take a ride upstate with them? Seemed like a trip I might never come back from. I was torn. My street instincts were on high alert. But Tone and Polk were respected producers who had had a string of hits with Nas, Will Smith, and R. Kelly. I really wanted to work with them. I invited Corey and Marky to come back by the barbershop so I could take their temperature before committing to anything. When they pulled up, they didn't seem pissed. In fact, they seemed really eager for me to come upstate with them. My instincts told me I'd be safe. I packed a small bag and took off with them that very afternoon. I ended up staying in Bearsville for 18 days. Albert Grossman might have envisioned the studio as a retreat, but my time there was one of the most competitive and creative periods of my life. I arrived at Bearsville as an MC whose reputation barely extended past my neighborhood. Suddenly, I found myself surrounded by some real industry heavy hitters, not just Tone and Polk, but established producers like LES, Al West, and Kurt Gowdy as well. Pros who really knew their way around the studio and made beats to the highest standard. There were also rappers there like Nori, Slick Rick, and later Nas, who were already very established in the culture. It would have been very easy, even understandable, for me to be intimidated by the environment at Bearsville. I was far away from home in some studio out in the middle of the woods. Most of the other artists there were way ahead of me in terms of success. A lot of rappers in my situation would have looked around, gotten unnerved, and taken the first bus home, fled back to the safety of their neighborhood, instead of subjecting themselves to the intensity of being locked in a building with their competition for 2 weeks. I wasn't going anywhere. Bearsville was like heaven to me. I loved that we were in the middle of nowhere and there was nothing else to focus on except the music. I was completely locked in. I wasn't the most polished rapper there, or the best lyricist, but I was determined no one there was going to outwork me. Other guys might start their day hungover or sitting in their room getting high, but I didn't hear those sorts of distractions. Once I woke up, the only thing I was doing was going for a jog in the